Patch 3.1 brought new Regiment of Renown units for the Warhammer 3 original factions. What are they? What are their roles? What do they do? Let's have a look. Our first unit is for Cathay with the Bandits of the Silver Road. These are Regiment of Renown peasant archers. They first of all have a shield, which is very nice for any ranged unit to have as it helps them when fighting other ranged units. But their big sell is their fire arrows and the weakness to fire that comes with their ammo as well from flammable. This will allow them to do decent damage to anything they shoot at, but especially stuff with a weakness to fire already, like trolls or undead units. So I think this is a really nice addition for Cathay. They don't really have any other fire units to really take advantage of that weakness to fire they can bring, but it's still very nice and means that this single unit, even though it's not too expensive, can rack up some serious damage value pretty quick. This unit shooting at one unit of trolls has nearly done 800 damage in value. So great value for money overall. They also have the Woodsman trait and Vanguard deployment, but I'm not really sure how much use that is. If you want to Vanguard deploy them, you need to support them with some other stuff. So probably just best used as a traditional missile unit. Next we have the Watchmen in the Night. These are armored Cossars that have traded in their pistol for an extra sword, giving them that dual-wielding anti-infantry prowess. So they've got the damage dealer quality, great for taking on enemy front lines, and I think they'll really be a staple of any front line, to be honest. At least when taking on things that aren't too heavily armored, as they don't have armor piercing. They still retain nice melee defense though, as the normal armored Cossars have. They also have Frenzy to give them even more damage dealing power, and Rabble Rouse, which gives them an immunity to psychology and spreads it in an aura around them, so nearby friendly units like these armored Cossar great weapons also are immune to psychology. So another really handy unit to have against undead factions, as they tend to be lightly armored, and you can protect people with immunity to psychology. They also do have Frostbite on their melee weapon as well, but I'm not really sure how much use that is, because all it does is reduce enemy movement speed by 30%, which when you're stood still fighting doesn't really matter. I guess it helps if they flee away and you want to chase them down, but that's about it. A very nice unit though, cool addition for Kislev. Now to probably the craziest unit of this pack, it's the Boglars of the Mad Marshes. These are basically 2 units for the price of 1. So overall they are Noblar Trappers. They have the ranged attack, they've got the poison, got a little bonus versus infantry, Vanguard deployment. But their big thing is that they will get healing when they are stood in water, and they will regenerate models while they're stood in any kind of water. So I decided to do a little test of this. I let them get beaten up by some marauders until they were down to about a quarter of their health, and then I pulled them away and sent them to go and have a bath. And it seems the only restriction to them actually regaining health or units is the healing cap, because their health will fly back up no matter how dead they are. You will see the health bar here just starts flying back up in fast forward, of course. So this unit can get beaten down to its last few models, maybe even just a single model, and then you go and put it in water when nothing's attacking it, and it will regenerate and bring models back and eventually come back to a full unit. Hence my point that it is basically 2 units for the price of 1, but of course it's only going to apply on maps with water on them, which isn't a massive amount, but it's a pretty cool ability to have anyway. Otherwise they are pretty much just the same in usage as Noblar Trappers, but given that it's 2 for the price of 1, it's going to be an essential unit for any Ogre army, if there's water about anyway. So a nice unit for the Ogre Kingdoms. So far 3 for 3 on these units being useful, I think. Next we've got some Khorne dogs. Regiment of Renown Flesh Hounds with some improved stats over the regular variant, as all these units do have. These ones all about stopping that damn dirty magic. They have the dampen effect, which can remove enemy units' magical attacks, which is very useful for them helping support the front line in demon units that have a physical resistance that a magic attack unit would otherwise be able to bypass. For example, these Chaos Warriors of Tzeentch normally have magic attacks, but now they don't because of those doggos. They've taken it away, no more magic damage for them. The doggos themselves also have a physical resistance, so they are protecting themselves as well. They also are immune to contact effects such as poison, and they have regeneration with the Gore Feast ability as well, but only when they're in melee. So they can team up with other units to try and help them out, or they can just go around solo making use of their abilities. There also is a minus 20% spell resistance with the dampen ability, but that's not much use for Khorne and a faction that doesn't have any magic. But still a nice unit with a good few uses. Now for a Nurgle unit with some baby Nurglings, the Frolickers Bubonic. These are Nurglings that are less about staying alive and being kinda tanky, and more about doing some damage but without really doing the damage themselves, and it makes them kind of a weird one. So they'll charge into melee combat, preferably with infantry as they normally would, and their blister back ability, which they have instead of Cloud of Flies, will give them melee damage reflection plus 10 and plus 8 leadership, which means every time they take a hit from an enemy unit, they are going to give 10 damage back, which on a model that has 50, 60, 70 health, that's quite significant. And if we compare them here to regular Nurglings, you can see their damage value so far in fighting about 200, whereas the normal Nurglings, they've only done about 50 damage. So it's about 4 times more damage for the Frolickers' Bubonic boys. So damage output is pretty good, but when your ability relies on you taking damage, it's not great for a unit that can disintegrate and disappear, and thus this unit is getting destroyed essentially by swordsmen and maybe a little help from the Lord. So overall, not that great. Unless, of course, we're in campaign and we've got Kugath with all the buffs and regeneration and such that he can bring to Nurglings, then these would be much more useful, I think. But it almost seems like they're going to be a bit of a suicide unit, because to get the most out of them, you need them in combat, but if they stay in combat, they die relatively easily. So yeah, a bit of a weird one that will probably need some looking after if you want them to survive. Next to Slaanesh's unit, and they've got their meaty spears out, as only Slaanesh would have it. The Princes of Perfection. These are Marauders of Slaanesh spears. Of course, very much the same as the normal unit, slight stat improvements. Got that bonus versus large, so still going after the large stuff. They do have Sulfuric Musk, which will reduce enemy melee attack and melee defense by 5. They also have Perfect Vigor, which is one of the most powerful attributes in the game. They basically never get tired, and thus their damage and defenses always stay up. So they can remain incredibly effective while in combat. So effective, in fact, that they are able to beat these Chaos Knights that they are fighting. They give that little stat reduction with Sulfuric Musk, which is going to help a little bit. It's not a huge reduction, right? But they are going to be able to outlast them, which is pretty crazy considering that this is a very expensive cavalry, and because these Princes of Perfection don't have armor piercing, and these horses are very heavily armored. So it's a very, very nice anti-large unit for Slaanesh. Pretty much the same role as the normal ones, but they can take on even some of the toughest top-tier units. So another nice addition in this unit pack. And finally for Tzeentch, we've got the Chromatic Abominations. These are Regiment of Renown Blue Horrors, with a few tricks up their sleeve, as you'd expect from Tzeentch. First, they have way more ammo at 16 compared to the regular Blue Horrors 4. So you want to be kind of skirmishing with them at first, making good use of that ammo before you put them into melee and start losing models and thus ammo, because it is a pretty strong magical attack, especially if something has a physical resistance, so you want to bypass it with the magical attack. And then they also have this cheeky little ability, which is a new one I think, 360 Missile Block. They can block missiles wherever they come from with their bronze shield. And then they also have Barrier Boost, which replenishes their barrier hit points whenever any spell is cast, whether friendly or otherwise. And this is a powerful ability. If you keep dropping spells and the enemy keeps dropping spells around, if they're a magic-y faction, it can be quite hard for the enemy to remove this barrier completely for long enough to do any significant damage to these Chromatic Abominations. So a nice little blue horror unit, pretty much the same as the normal one. You just want to try and use all that missile ammo up first, which takes a bit longer, but that's good. They can skirmish in and out. And then once they've run out of ammo, you can throw them in melee, where they can be quite tough if you keep the magic going off. So a nice unit for Tzeentch there, as all these units are pretty nice, bar maybe the Nurgle unit, which is kind of sad because Nurgle is the faction that needs the most help with some better units right now, and in this pack it got the worst unit of the bunch probably. They need some damage dealer units, and they kind of got that with this unit, but it doesn't last very long and seems to just die anyway, so I'm not sure how great that's going to be. But there we go. Hope you've enjoyed this. Thanks for watching. Thanks to all the patrons who support this channel. And hey, you ever wonder what the worst melee infantry in the game is? We're going to find out in this video. I'll see you in the future.